Yeah. I'm Pete Gregory. I teach anthropology here at Northwestern. And Tad and I are going to have a little session. I think some of you've met him already, and you know him as a blues man, but there's a whole nother side of Tad, you know. He's just telling me about a place in Baton Rouge called Tabby's. We all know, some of us, if you know the blues. And so I told Shane, I don't want to interview Tad about blues, you know. And I listen to blues, I don't play, so I don't have good questions about blues. But anyway, he was talking about tabbies and the water running across the floor in tabbies when he was all plugged in, you know. I think he's been interested in the wetlands ever since.
Yeah.
And so he's been instrumental in getting people in Louisiana to pay attention to what's happening to your coast. And lots of us are concerned about that for different reasons. And I came to it, he's an old LSU guy. I came to it long before his time at LSU. We were surveying the coast after the hurricanes, long before anybody really realized how much of the coast was going away. And so I've been going up and down the wetlands, up into the Chapelay Basin, on up into the Black and Washita River Valley. So you guys from North Louisiana are part of this story. And so I thought I'd let Tad talk to you about the wetlands and what he thinks about the wetlands, and we can get some questions. We'd really like to have a Q&A more than anything, so let you guys talk a while. He's already been here for what, an hour and a half?
Been here all day.
Yeah, so and he's got to go back to work after this, so he's got a long gig here. And so let's sit down and talk a while.
Yeah, let's sit down and talk. Thank y'all for hanging out and hanging out for the speaking portion of the show. Yeah, I first noticed, well, I went to be a pilot, and I started working for the oil companies down and around the coast, pretty much between the Chapelay and the Mississippi, you know, which is about 100-mile wide spread right there. And, you know, we would fly seaplanes out to the rigs when we still had inland drilling going on. And where I really started to learn a lot was flying pipeline patrol, which is you fly at low altitude, really low to the ground with a spotter, and you're looking for leaks. You know, anything that's going wrong with the pipeline, it's up to us to check them. Now, I don't know if y'all have ever seen a map of the pipelines on the coast of Louisiana, but if you've seen a bowl of spaghetti, you've seen the map. I mean, it really is that, it's an unbelievable amount of piping we have under there. And some of that stuff is, you know, I'm talking back from the 30s and 40s, you know, things that were abandoned, pipelines that were not repaired, not fixed, not cleaned up, you know, pulled out, that some of them have been leaking since the 40s, and they've been reported every time, and we weren't, nobody was fixing it, you know, but there was all these little things that just kept bother me about this job. If my job is to go out there and look for problems, and I see problems and I report them and nothing gets done, then what am I doing? Why am I wasting my time? You know, and one of the biggest problems that I saw was the land disappearing, and you know, and pipelines that were in a pipeline canal, and then one part of the canal washes away, and now, well, where is that pipeline? One tidal surge comes in and pulls it, and then the next time you fly out there, you'd see pipes coming out of the water that were mangled. You know, so what would happen was 2 or 3 pipelines would get mangled up and tangled, and nobody knew which one belonged to who. You're talking, you know, it's a big mess. And my thoughts were, you know, why isn't anybody talking about what the real problem is? The real problem is the coast where we built all of this infrastructure for the energy for this whole country is washing away at an alarming rate, and there's nothing being done to protect not just the infrastructure, but us that live on top of this infrastructure. You would think, well, I thought that everybody would think if this was brought to the table, that, you know, the right decision would be, well, there's only 2 decisions that can be made right there. We either have to move all of this stuff, or we have to fix the problem, you know, and the problem was the land is eroding, and it shouldn't be. The Mississippi Delta should be building land. That's what it does. Deltas build land. If you look at a map, or if you're ever driving down, you know, by New Orleans, and you look at the North Shore, where Mandeville is, they have pine trees, they have red clay, they have sandy soil, they have a whole different type of you know, ecological system there that we don't have. Like, there's not one rock in Houma, Louisiana, unless it was brought to Houma, Louisiana. No rocks. You know, people find that hard to believe. We don't have red clay. You know, we didn't have pine trees unless somebody planted them. Everything that's down there was built by the Mississippi River, depositing sediment. So everything south of Mandeville was built by the Mississippi River. And that would continuously build if we allowed it to. Now, you know, as soon as I started seeing the problem, I got to figure out, well, what caused this? You know, where's the issue? Well, the issue is shipping was the main thing that I kept getting from government and from the Corps of Engineers. The Port of New Orleans is the 5th largest port on the planet, obviously the biggest one in this country, and it's the port that we sell everything out of. You know, all of the other ports to import, what are we selling to people? Cars, grain, and fuel. It's all coming out the Mississippi. So to keep that river deep was a big deal, and I understand, and it should be a big deal. But the method to doing it, back when they decided to get, how are we going to get this river deep enough to get the shipping, you know, get the big ships in and out, their idea was, let's choke it down, like squeezing the end of a hose. Let's build levees to squeeze the river down. So what you have is a 100-mile wide delta system that's choked down to a mile wide, you know. Now, that causes problems not just for there. I mean, all the way up. I mean, it's the main drain for 2/3 of the country. So what happens all the way up the river? It's flooding in Minnesota. Well, why? I don't know. We got the main drain backed up. What do y'all think? Well, it's not just there. I mean, you know, all I kept seeing was this is river mismanagement that's causing the problem. And how do you change that? Well, that's the biggest job on the planet. You know, to try to get the Corps of Engineers to change the idea of how to do this. I mean, we're throwing sediment out off the continental shelf. Sediment that could be built on land. We could be taking it and putting it right over the levee and replenishing that entire area. The land's coming to us every day, all day. It's the 3rd largest river on the planet. It's bringing a bunch of dirt. We don't have a problem with dirt. The problem we have is getting it over the levees, getting it where it needs to go. And that was never figured into the plan. You know, the plan was land's bad, get rid of it, it's impeding shipping. Because, you know, you got to understand how the river works. You know, the river is carrying all that sediment from Canada to the Gulf, and carrying sediment from the Appalachians to the Rockies, and all the major rivers flow into the Mississippi between those 2 mountain ranges. And as long as it's got that speed, it's carrying that sediment with it. As soon as it loses speed, when it hits that open body of water, it drops the sediment. So right at the mouth of the river would pile up with dirt. There's the barrier islands piling up, you know, and then the river would find another way to go, and it would pile it up there until it built this entire 100-mile wide delta. You know, well, how do we stop that from happening? And this is what they did.
One of the things about that is the river did change, where, you know, like the land to the east of New Orleans, out in the Chandelier Islands, you know, that was a delta that's gone away already. There's only a few of the islands are left. The old delta. If you fly across that, you see the islands across the end of the barrier islands that are left. And then it shifted back to Bayou Lafourche, and then it shifted back to where it is now. So the land below New Orleans is, you know, very, very recent land. You know, that whole lower end of the delta there is less than 10,000 years old. And so the rivers moved all the way from the western delta, which was way over closer to Lake
Chapel
Charles.
Isle, yeah, oh, yeah.
On the other side of the Chapel Isle. And then it moved back, and it's moved 5 times. Make a long story short, it's moved 5 times across that coast. And each time the channels move, well, the river channels develop differently. You build a new delta and you've got different problems of moving in and out. And of course, in the old days, it wasn't a problem. The Indians had a little P road and they moved when the delta moved. So you can follow the Indian communities back and forth across that marshland for almost 10,000 years. And wherever it's above dirt, a lot of it's buried. Their villages are down 10, 15 feet below the earth level now.
Yeah.
Been that much deposition. So things are beginning to wash away. Up the river, where we started building levees, way up the river, like in southern Minnesota and Illinois, particularly in Illinois, we built levees to protect the farmland from the annual floods of the Mississippi. And that pushed more water down here, and then as you constricted with more levees, you put more water down here, and it's got nowhere to go except down that little gutter we're talking about. Yeah, down that chute.
Yeah.
And then you got a lot more water pressure coming down as you build levees up. So it's a very complicated system. You know, whatever you do on the lower end affects the upper end, and the upper end affects the lower end. It's a system. And it's tough, you know. And,
I mean, I think we made it more complicated
we made
than
it
it really
more
is.
complicated, yeah.
It's pretty simple. This water just wants to go down and level out, you know.
Yeah, it wants to find someplace that don't have to move.
It wants to go downhill and it wants to be flat and level, you know. That it's actually a beautiful system built by Mother Nature.
Yeah, it works well.
That does what it needs to do and is consistent.
Before the Europeans came, the whole valley flooded every year, probably to a depth of 2 feet, and it didn't stay over. We estimate it didn't stay over the valley very long. Water came over the valley and went away. Indian people moved up across the lake or moved up to the prairies. They came back when the water went out, but they didn't farm it extensively. They didn't ranch it extensively. It wasn't a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well,
and all the plantations, I mean, they were built where the living quarters are the second floor, you know.
Yeah, built up above the ground.
I mean, to live in a system like that, you have to live with it.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to manipulate the Delta system to live the way you would like to live, which is in a slab house where I can drive the car right up to the front door.
Yeah, building slab houses in Louisiana, that's a kind of interesting problem. We all do it. It's a kind of interesting problem. You know, just going to, in the first place, further south from here, it's going to sink. Sooner or later, you're going to have slabs crack everywhere. You know, somebody once told me I built a house a couple of years ago, and I went out and found a crack, and he said, "Well, it's concrete." I said, "Yeah." He said, "Well, concrete cracks." I said, "Well, I wish it didn't, but where I put it, yeah, it probably will." And so this is not a stable down to bedrock. We've got no bedrock. Speaking of rock, bedrock is a long way down for us. And rock in the valley, all the way up to southeastern Arkansas, a piece of gravel is a rock. You know,
Yeah.
a piece of rock as big as your fist in Louisiana is a rock. In Arkansas, they just laugh at you. But we don't have any rock. And the
Closest thing we had was oyster shells.
yeah, right. That's
I
right.
mean,
You got oyster shells.
But try throwing one of them at your little brother.
Yeah. We better.
You gotta lead them just right, because it flies like a frisbee.
Yeah.
You can't just hum it like this and it goes straight where your arm went.
Yeah, that's a problem. The Indians ate a lot of shellfish and left mounds all along the coast. Well, guess what we did with the mounds? We come along with the mounds and we said, "Oh, well, we don't have any rock down here. We can build shell roads." And the oil companies in particular built shell roads. So they dredged off the shell all the way across from Alabama to the mouth of the Mississippi River and tore up all the Indian sites. And, you know, archaeologists, we worry about that. But the shell went in the roads, you know, so if you've got a shell road close to your house, you can probably go out and find an arrowhead, or you can probably go out and pick up a piece of pottery, but no telling, it's probably from Alabama and Mississippi. And we brought them across there. So we mined the shell, like some people mine rock in other places. And that took away a lot of stability off the coast. Those old shell mounds were often the basis for the barrier islands. And some of it was natural shell, and some of it was Indian deposited shell, and now we tore it up. Want to build a road, want to build a road in New Orleans and go get some shell.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of the roads in Houma when I was a kid were shells.
Shell roads.
You know.
Tell them about the tree that you used to swing on. That's how you.
Wow. Well, I mean, yeah.
It was on my land. Now there's no land. He said, Mom, you're lost. You can't put your land.
Well, yeah. That's my mom over there. For anybody that's new.
So he was a pilot, and his other brother, right underneath him, we have a lot of children, was also a pilot, and they would tell me, Mom, your lane's missing in the back. The tree that we used to swing into the water is now in the water. So they used to swing.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't have a pool. But we had bayous and swamps, and yeah, we spent a lot of time in the water, and yeah, a rope swing was a big deal to us. You know, we always had rope swings, and you know, the trees would erode as the land would wash away. That tree would fall in, and then we'd go to the next tree, and got to the point where there was no big trees anymore. It was just all of the big, well, especially the live oaks, because those were the best ones to swing off of, because they were strong and they got good limbs that you could climb. And, you know, and those are the first ones to go. Anytime you get a little salt water in the system, those live oaks are done, and then the cypress trees are right after it. I mean, I watched sections of like 20 miles by 5 miles just die off, a whole forest of lush cypress forest die off in one year. You know, 1 year it'd be like from a lush forest to just some sticks sticking up, and then one storm comes through and knocks all the sticks down, which is the trees, and then now that's part of the Gulf. That's how fast that stuff happens.
Is that because brackish water comes in and that salt?
Yeah, salt water. Well, I mean, if you don't have the river, because the river is actually supposed to be feeding all of the bayous and all the tributaries down there. It's a fan. The delta makes a fan, and it's fanning out, and all of that is supposed to be fed by the river, and the river has been choked off, and it doesn't feed that fresh water through those bayous anymore. So salt water comes in. You know, if you don't have fresh water competing with the salt water, you take the fresh water feed out of it, and the salt water comes in, and it just starts eating everything that's reliant on fresh water. And like we said, we don't have rocks, so there's nothing holding the ground together except vegetation. So, and the vegetation lives on fresh water. I don't know any vegetation down there that lives on salt water, except the mangroves like in Florida, but we don't have that where I live. There's a type of mangrove there, but it's fresh, it's saltwater sensitive. It's not like the stuff that grows in the Keys in Florida, you know, where that stuff thrives in pure salt water. We have to have a certain amount of fresh water to handle it, keeping everything alive, so we can hold the ground together. And then here's another big problem that's happening right now is because the land is washing away so fast, now they're building levees across at the bottom, like basically hurricane protection levees, because we don't have protection from the marshes and the swamps anymore. Because it would take 3 miles of marsh and swamp would knock a tidal surge down by a foot. 3 miles is not really that much to knock a tidal surge from a storm down 1 foot. That's a big foot, And so now what we're doing is we're building levees across the coast, which is speeding up the process of killing everything on the other side of the levee. So there's a problem where you go, well, where are we going to put the levee? What are we going to try to save? And what are we just going to say, well, bye to? Because anything on the other side of that levee is bye-bye, quick. As soon as you put a wall up, fresh water can't trickle down through rain and the natural process of, water trying to find its way to the Gulf. Well, now you made a wall where the water can't go to those areas and keep everything alive. So now, there's places where they put a levee up and it's nothing but open water on the other side of those levees.
Why is the Corps of Engineers reluctant to
I mean, why is a tough question. I've asked why myself many times, and they go, well, you got to talk to the special man, and then you got to talk to the other special man.
Yeah.
And
And
the
you got to
why.
talk,
Permits.
you got to talk to the Congress,
The,
you know?
Who in the Louisiana legislature should we support that will try to do something about this?
Yeah.
Or is there such an animal?
any one of them any one of them that tells the truth. As soon as you find one that tells the truth, well, you call me and I'll support them too. Because that's going to be the important thing. And this is one of the struggles that I have with, I formed Voice of the Wetlands because I was trying to go join up with another organization and use whatever notoriety I had to help. And every meeting I went to was the same people at all these other wetlands restoration organizations. It's all the same people, and it's government people, and it's oil people, it's industry people. It's not regular people. It's not real people, I guess, as far as just the average person that sees something going on in their backyard. These are all the same people, and they're fighting for money. They're fighting for grants. It was nothing about really fixing anything. Every time I would bring up something, and believe me, I had an airplane for a long time that I owned, and it's expensive to keep an airplane up, but I was keeping it so that I could go and see for myself what was really going on, because I can't listen to what they're telling me. I want to see it with my own eyes, and I want to have the ability to show them when they call me out. And so I was looking for ways, because hey, if the Delta was built by the Mississippi, then it flowed through here originally, then there's got to be a way for it to flow back through there again. And I would go look for ways that we could do it cheap, and it would absolutely be 100% effective before I bring it in. And I went to Congress, and I made friends with guys from the Corps so that I could get them in my airplane so we could go look at this, with their own eyes. And the hardest part is getting them to sit down and actually write down what they really saw. Because when you bring the truth in and you lay it on the table, it's going to affect somebody's job. And I understand that, and I'm not trying to, and I never wanted to try to, affect anybody's livelihood. But anytime you put the truth on the table and there's a solution, somebody is going to benefit and somebody is not. And usually the one that's going to lose has the biggest mouth, Well, the money is the mouth, yes. So, that becomes a big problem. And so I started Voice of the Wetlands because there was no way I was going to go join one of those organizations and be able to speak for them with their agenda going on. So I wanted to start something where I didn't have anybody telling me what we could say and what we couldn't say. Somebody's got to lay the truth out. Somebody's got to tell the truth, or we don't get anything fixed. You have to diagnose the problem the right way, which means you look at the truth the right way to figure out what the solution is. The best mechanic is the guy who can diagnose the problem the best. How many guys you bring your car to and they goes, well, if we do a little tune-up and we change the spark plugs and, we're going to put some additive in the gas tank, and it's going to be all better. Well, no, it's the guy that tells you, hey, man, the motor's junk. We got to put a new one in there. You don't want to hear that, but that's the guy you need to go to. And it's the same thing with this problem. They don't want to hear what the real solution is going to do. But we haven't made a decision to move anything. We have so many things down there that the whole country relies on, not just the state of Louisiana, not just Houma. The whole country relies on things that are down there, infrastructure that's built there. And nobody has mentioned, what are we going to do? If the land keeps retreating this fast, are we going to move this? Because it's going to affect everybody. But everybody's going to be shocked because they haven't heard the truth about it. They already are. Every time something happens on the coast, like a Katrina or the BP oil spill, and then people start losing their jobs all over the country in plastics plants and things like that, they're going, well, how can this be? Just from this one little thing in Louisiana. It's like, because that's the root of your job. It starts down there, you know?
Are they doing anything now, like moving hot line zones or anything?
They're doing little things here and there. Most of what's being done now is not restoration. What's being done now is just drawing the lines, like I said, with the levees. Like let's just like close the mist to go. Let's just do that. Let's just make a wall. But you know, we got subsidence also. You know, so South Louisiana is also sinking as it's eroding. So you put a wall up, you're still going down.
Gotta say,
And and not only that, you put up a 20-foot wall, and that wall is sinking too. So that becomes a 15-foot wall, and then a 10-foot wall. And if you go to Congress and ask for money, you have to continuously go to Congress and continuously ask for money to keep trying to build the wall up higher and higher. But we're going to end up all below sea level, surrounded by water anyway, if we don't change the real problem, which is get some rebuilding.
Rising sea level is a fact, you know, and it's a worldwide fact. And even before we had problems in Louisiana, any sedimentation like we get in the delta at the mouth of the river is pushing down, and that displaces the Gulf. It comes up a little bit for us anyway, just the weight of the delta itself. And so we've always been going down a little, and it's balanced out naturally. But once we start changing that balance, well, then you've got new problems. And so you bring rock down here, it sinks faster than dirt.
Yeah.
And so,
No, there's places where we threw rocks.
Wave, like what happened in our house.
What's that?
Mississippi beachfront, that 30-foot wave, you can't, nothing.
Well, I mean, if you get a Category 5 coming right directly to your front door, I mean, there's no wall or levee that's going to stop that. I mean, that's part of living on the coast.
They had maybe an island or something to stop that wave from coming in.
yeah. The marsh was a great thing. I mean, the natural marsh, with that 3 to 5 miles out, was an important barrier against that wind, the tidal surges. And without that, we've lost a lot of that. I mean, you look at the old maps.
We've lost the size of Delaware and Rhode
Yeah.
Island put together.
And we
It
lose.
used to be the coast of Louisiana. In fact, you know, if you pay close attention, the coastline of Louisiana changes. You can see it yearly now when you watch the Weather Channel. You can see like where we live, you know, like Louisiana shaped like the boot, and you got the toe that comes out, and that's the Mississippi. Well, the ball of the foot is where Terrebonne Parish is, and Terrebonne Lafourche. That the ball of the foot of Louisiana keeps slowly becoming a flat foot. Like it's changing its shape, and it's changing it so fast that now, you know, you can see it yearly just by looking at the Weather Channel footage of what's going on, or Google Earth, or, you know. But sometimes Google Earth, where we live, is 10, 15 years behind. Mm-hmm. I can't figure out why. Yeah. Maybe they don't want y'all to see the ball of the foot disappearing.
Well, particularly this year, Mississippi's been high all year. It's
not just Mississippi,
high.
all these rivers all the way up. Yeah.
In 2016, the Mississippi got as high as anybody's ever recorded it getting, and it didn't break the levees. This year, what's probably saved us was the Arkansas River levees broke, and took a lot of the water that was coming down into the Mississippi out of the Arkansas and dumped it in the flatlands up there in their alluvial floodplain. That water didn't come south. If that water had come south, we probably would be where we were in 2016, plus if we got a tidal surge, we'd be in real trouble.
With a storm,
it was 2 feet below the top of the levee in New Orleans this year. Yeah. And so it's a problem for the whole state, you know.
Why are they reluctant to open up their chapel eye?
Because the Corps has no guarantee that Mother Nature wouldn't take the river and do what the river wants to do.
The old river structure.
And it would leave, if you took the old river structure out and you open the chapel eye, the Morganza spillway, the river take that channel and go out. There's a little delta right at Morgan City already, just off of the chapel eye. It's doing what the Mississippi would do. Before the old river,
Lake,
before the old river project went in, probably 40 to 30% of the Mississippi River went down the chapel eye. That's where it wanted to go. That's a straight shot to the Gulf. And if you go down the other way, you got to kind of meander your way down. And like Tad said, water wants to go and settle.
And there's an 18-foot difference between the Chafalaya and the existing Mississippi River.
Yeah,
Right now, especially.
right now,
yeah,
right
yeah,
now.
Right now.
Right now.
I mean, in normal times, probably a 6 or 8 foot difference. Yeah.
73, when the flood in 73, weren't they concerned about
Losing the Old River water, the whole Old River lock complex in 73, yeah. They were afraid they'd lose the lock. And so that's a delicate thing, and we've interrupted that process. We let the river do its natural thing. The delta would be at Morgan City.
Yeah.
Well, then when that happens, saltwater, yeah, well, they wouldn't be high and dry, but the saltwater would be up as far as Baton Rouge. And the river would do what the river normally does when it abandons, it fills up the channels. So we have Cane River here, which is the old Red River channel. And Red River took another channel in 1850 east of here, went straight down towards the Mississippi. And so the rivers do that in the floodplains as a natural thing. So yeah, we've made commitments to keeping the river in the channel past the city of New Orleans, past Baton Rouge. Deep water shipping comes up as far as Baton Rouge, that's as far as they can get. And so that's the Corps trying to keep that channel.
That's their channel.
That's right, that channel.
You see, my idea was to go find places where, like we were talking about, where the water can go straight down from the river and get straight into the places where we have the most erosion.
Right.
And I found those places.
Yeah.
And all we need to do is get that river, that levee cut out and a control structure right there, and we can relieve some of that. Instead of throwing the water into spillways, which are like flooding farmland, or throwing it into the Lake Pontchartrain, places where it's doing no good, let's throw it into places where it can do some good, where it can. Let's go in there and look at it.
Why haven't they done a demonstration of that?
Because it would cost a lot of money. When you decided that was a good idea, you know, if we decided, I know, but I think, and this is, and this is where organizations like we come in, because we're not trying to raise money to fix anything directly on the ground. We can't. The land doesn't belong to us. All the land that we're trying to protect or trying to rebuild out there a lot of it belongs to oil companies. We sold the marshes and the swamps to the oil companies years ago. So we can't just go digging on somebody's property or throwing dirt on somebody else's property. Well, but there are a couple of oil companies out there, that the smaller ones and the American ones, that have infrastructure built out there, that are actually rebuilding their own land because they have to. They can't afford to move pipelines up like the Shells and the BPs, because they do it every year. They take pipelines and move them, the ones that end up in open water, so they don't end up with that tangled mess, every time we have a tidal surge storm. But my organization, Voice of the Wetlands, is about awareness. It's about, because the only way we're really going to get this fixed is national political will. It's the only way. It ain't about money. A lot of people would love to say, oh, well, we ain't never going to come up with the money to fix this. I showed them a lot of ways that we could do it with almost no money, like almost, that's like a billion to us, almost no money. But they're talking about, it's a 40, 50, 60 billion dollar deal. I'm like, no, there's ways we can do this without that, but it's more about the will to do it as a nation, not as Louisiana, not as local people, and that's what I know it's going to take. How do we get people to understand this in other states? And I travel to all the other states, so I do my best to try to explain it to people. Like just about explaining how a river delta works. It takes me an hour of talking to people after a show just to get them to understand where the erosion comes from, because they all think we live below sea level and we shouldn't live there. They think, well, what are y'all doing down there? Y'all just need to move. Well, it's like, well, all right, well, who's gonna get all the oil for y'all down there? Who's gonna get all the seafood for y'all? We can't just move.
Is your foundation
We did, the documentary about Voice of the Wetlands.
Well, what's happening and what needs to be done?
We did an IMAX movie, which is called Hurricane on the Bayou, which we got started right after I started Voice of the Wetlands organization. IMAX people came to me and asked me if I wanted to do a film about it. And basically it was about what would happen if a major hurricane hit the coast of Louisiana. And it started 2 years before Katrina. And it takes 2 years to make those movies. And Katrina hit right on cue and finished the movie. So now it's called Hurricane Warning. And it does a good job of explaining it, explaining like the simple parts of it. Because when we were doing this, I mean, obviously they were coming to me about it, and I'm taking them in the airplane, I'm taking them in an airboat, I'm showing them everything. I'm like, we got to cover this, we got to cover that, we got to cover this. I'm like, there's so much to talk about. And they going, hold on, cowboy, we got 42 minutes, 42 minutes of film that we're gonna be running at these IMAX theaters. And kids have to be able to understand it, because there's gonna be a lot of busloads of kids that come to the IMAXs to watch this. So it's gotta be kid friendly, which means we can't get into deep discussions about, what's causing this and what's causing that. It's got to be simplified. So, but it does a really good job of explaining the beginning of it, how we got to this point, and what we could do to help. It's you got to go see it anyway, because it's the only movie that was filmed about Katrina before Katrina, and it came true. And they were the first cameras in the city after the levees broke,
Was it distributed nationwide?
Yes.
Because okay, because I was gonna say, a lot of people don't care about Louisiana.
Well, they cared about Katrina because it was a worldwide story. So, I mean, the trailer was it was airboats and alligators, which kids love. So, so that was a big part of the movie poster. Had to have an airboat and an alligator on it, and the kids go, "I want to go see that." But yeah, it was nationwide. But you're talking '06.
But Marilyn Andrew herself said that she lived right here in Louisiana, and she didn't come down until just a few years ago. And she said, I was shocked. I didn't even know, and that's what needs to happen. The people that live in Washington are not down here to physically see it themselves. And Tab and I alone live on property that's not there, so we could tell them.
Yeah, well, I mean, she gave me an award for Mary Landry, yeah. Yeah, she gave me an award for patting me on the back for all the work I was doing. And now get out of here and shut up, all right? Here's your plaque. Good job. Now you can shut down the whole organization now. You got your plaque. It's like, no, I ain't doing this for plaques and trophies. Because, I mean, they don't like me at those meetings.
And they tell us
But they have to allow me, because it's our, if we don't get involved in government as the people of this country, then you keep getting what you're getting. They're gonna keep running away with it. They're gonna keep the lies up. They're gonna keep things going to where we're not gonna understand what's really going on. When if we don't jump in and be involved, I always looked at it like, this is not a lazy man's country. If you want to be free, then you have to be responsible for something in this country to be free like you want to be. You want to be free to be yourself, be whoever you want to be, fine. Then you have to help.
So how do we help? How do we get involved?
I could tell you is what I did. The first thing I did when I started seeing problems was show up to city council meetings that allow you to speak. Every city council meeting that I've seen gives a portion to the public and lets you speak about things. There's always something where you can get in there and talk, and then from that they went, hey, this guy, he knows what he's talking about. Now, go in there with some truth. Don't go in there with opinion. Because if you go in there and go, I'm a Republican and you're a Democrat, or vice versa, and you go, I don't like you and you don't like me and all of that, that's not going to work. I walk in there with some actual information that I had, and when they were talking about coastal issues, which where I live happens pretty often, and they went, well, you got to go to the state with that, you know, and then the state went, well, you got to go to Congress with that. So they sent me, you know, to the top of government. The only place that didn't go was the White House, you know, and they let me say what needed to be said, you know, and they didn't sequester me or they didn't tell me I couldn't say any curse words. No, they let me say what needed to be said, and I wasn't going to go in and call anybody out. I think that's important too. You know, it's like everybody, you know, where you live, you see your backyard and you see what goes on in your backyard better than anybody else, right? And all of our backyards join up to each other. And if we all look in our backyard and we all pay attention to what's going on around us, we're gonna know exactly what needs to be fixed before anybody else. So bring it in. You know, when I see drainage issues, especially where we live, where it's a big deal, if I see, you know, ditches that are clogged or culverts that are clogged, I make a call. You know, it's up to us to be paying attention to what's going on around us. We can actually operate more infrastructure than we giving ourselves credit for, and we should be. It's our duty as American citizens to be a part of the government that allows us to be a part of this government. It's a big deal. We fought for that. People died for our right. There's people all over the world that are losing their lives trying to get heard by their government, and here we are. We got an open door policy that we can walk into and help out and get involved, and all we want to do is yell at the TV. You know, the door's open. It's been open. I went through it. They let me through it, and I'm just a regular old dude. You know, nobody knew me when I was getting involved in all of this. I mean, had fans around little pockets here and there, but you know, now I'm in the Folk Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah, there you go.
I got more. I got power now.
That's the best. That's probably the best thing we can do for the environment.
That's right. Give me more awards. No.
Plant a lot of trees along the coastline.
Yeah, but the trees keep dying. You can't fix the problem unless you give fresh water.
Yeah.
We need fresh water. We need river water. The river's got all the nutrients and all the sediment and everything that we need. You know, like that new delta that's building south of Morgan City. You know, there was a scientist from LSU. I ain't naming no names, but he wrote an article in our Houma local paper that said there's no way we can use the river water to rebuild any land because it's too polluted from all of the farming and everything upriver, and there's too many dams and dikes and weirs upriver. It doesn't have near the sediment that it used to have. All of these things that this guy said was basically telling us in Houma, y'all just need to leave because we can't do anything. And I got his number and I called him. I'm like, dude, what are you doing? You can't just tell us that. Come fly with me in my airplane. I'm gonna show you something. And I flew him to the Atchafalaya, and as we were going from the Houma airport, when you take off from the Houma airport, which our house is just south of, it looks cancerous. It looks brown. You can see that it's dead. As we're getting closer to the Atchafalaya Delta, it starts getting greener and greener, and there's more grass and greener and more grass. And the birds, the flocks of birds flying around. I mean, I'm in an airplane now. You got to watch out for these birds. I don't want to do like Sully, you know. But if I had to, I could, you know. But I landed on water first in the seaplane, so you know. But anyway, I'm flying these guys over there, and I said, "Well, y'all haven't looked at the Atchafalaya?" And they go, "Well, we've been working on the Mr. Goat." Well, like, well, then how do you know what can be done with the Mississippi water if you're not looking at what it's doing? And as we getting closer to the mouth of the river, that guy is looking at, he goes, "Man, who owns all of this pasture land out here?" I'm like, "That's a healthy marsh." And you're a Delta expert advising our politicians and Corps of Engineers on what we're going to do down here, and you don't even know what a healthy marsh looks like. You know, and he's sitting there talking to the other guys in the back that he brought with him, and they're trying to talk each other out of what they're seeing. They're going, well, there's no way. I'm like, well, yes, there's a way. And he goes, and all of that new land, is that from dredging? I'm like, no, that's from not dredging. The river is depositing land right at the mouth of the Atchafalaya, just like we talked about earlier. It's building land. There's trees on that land. There's birds living on there. And most of that was in the last 20 years. It's quicker than they thought.
And that's the same polluted, so-called polluted water.
Right. And the pipelines, the pipeline canals that I used to fly down there were filled in. All you could see was a line in the grass that was a little bit different color than the rest of the grass around it. That was a canal. So you let the river do its thing, it's going to repair all the damage that we did. It's amazing. And this guy couldn't believe it because he thought the water was too polluted. There wasn't enough sediment to build land. I'm like, man, you know, if these are the guys in charge of everything, we're in trouble.
Yeah, there's a couple of models that would take below New Orleans, would go down by about Carnarvon.
Yeah.
They cut the old channel. They cut the levee at Carnarvon in 27 to let the water go out across Plaquemine Parish. And supposedly Plaquemine Parish is going to be repatriated or repatriated.
Yeah.
And never happened. But anyway, they cut the levee and the river went off through there. And so it would carry, you could cut that same cut where it never has come back since 27 much.
Yeah.
And you could carry a certain amount of water across there, back over into the bays to the west. And that's one model. And some people say that will work. Other people say, no, that won't work. You know, you can't do that. So they argue back and forth about the models, what will work and what won't work. And so while they're talking about it, we still got the problem. And,
there's another project where they cut the levee, the Davis Pond project,
Yeah.
which this is one of the ones that I saw from the air, and I went, wait, hold on, because this is a straight shot to a natural bayou, which was called Grand Bayou Blue, which runs straight right into the middle of the heart of the erosion, you know.
Yeah.
And I called the guys I know from the Corps and some of the local engineers around where I live just to see if I was missing something. So we did do that, and the original idea was that the channel would continue to be cut all the way to that natural bayou, and then that would send fresh water right to the middle of the delta. What stopped it was lawsuits with oyster fishermen.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another problem that comes up.
Now, who owns that land? Is it the oyster fishermen or fishermen?
Well, I don't know who owns it. I mean, it's you know, it's Lake Salvador area where water was supposed to go into down there. But all the oyster fishermen just south of the lake right there, there was a bunch of lawsuits going on, you know, trying to sue the state for bringing in too much fresh water and killing the oysters. And the state actually had money to move them. The state was actually going to pay to move their oyster beds farther south, but it would get less convenient. You know, it's a lot easier to catch oysters out your back door than to have to take a boat 30 miles, you know. But, you know, and those are the kinds of things that we deal with when you're trying to talk about what needs to happen to stop the erosion. You know, everybody's you're going to cut into somebody's job and somebody's livelihood, and it's difficult to do that, you know. And right now it's a hard time to talk about any of it because you know, the oil business is down where we live, and you know, it's always been you either for business or you for the environment. It's kind of hard to mix them together, and I think if we could find a way to do that, then we'd have a better chance.
How has that affected, you know, Louisiana, the sporting paradise? How has that affected recreational fishing and the fishing guys?
Believe it or not, the fishing is better because you got saltwater fish that can encroach deeper into places where they have better hiding places and better spawning areas. You know, they're not out in the open water dealing with sharks. You know, the saltwater fish are way up inland. You know, there's flounder by my camp that act like bass. They're sideways in the grass. They're not laying on the ground with them two eyes like that. Yeah, when a bass and sockeye, they're moving farther north, just like everybody else.
They're up in the basin.
They're moving wherever we going. They're watching us. They go, if these people pack up and move north, we got to get in the truck with them.
We got time? Okay. Well, Ted, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
good luck.
Thank y'all for listening.